Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
Hi, Sai. I'm great. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. And we definitely have an opportunity to catch up with Stephanie today in anticipation of the conference that's coming up on May 13th with the Women Business Collective and Andy Simon. And before I let Stephanie kind of introduce herself and what have you, the topic at hand, especially today, with a brilliant individual, is entrepreneurship. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
It's my pleasure to be here, Sai, and I will take over and do something that I love to do, which is introduce myself and also introduce the conference. Lets the viewers know a little bit about who I am, and then we'll jump into a few valuable topics as a primer for the conference. Before we get going, everybody watching, Catalyzing the Future is a conference event for women in business, in entrepreneurship, looking to take their lives and their career to the next step. So valuable in these current times. The event, as I said, is on May 13th from 11 to 3 Eastern Time, and it's virtual, of course, in these current times. And registration is easy at catalyzingthefuture.com. So we hope this is a snippet in this conversation of the great value you're going to get out of the conference. So please register at catalyzingthefuture.com. And for me personally, I'm a career entrepreneur, which I will give you a little background on me in a moment, but I'll do a little self-promoting right now. I wrote a book a few years ago, really to step into the conversation of entrepreneurship for women as a role model. And my publisher is allowing me to give away signed copies of the book this spring. It's called All In, and the focus of the book is really a hands-on practical advice, strategic journey of how do you integrate personal life, business life, and to help women entrepreneurs think bigger, build sustainable businesses, and change the world. As Sai says, think, build, change. I really hope it's a tool for women behind me to learn some of the practical things I learned the hard way and use them yourself. If you're interested in a copy of the book for free, simply just notate that you want a book in the registration, and I'll mail one to you. So there's promotion for the event and the giveaway on the book. Little bit about myself before we jump into the conversation. As I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a career entrepreneur. I am the co-founder of Care.com HomePay, which is a very niche business. It's payroll, taxes, benefits, and labor consultation for household employers and their employees, families with full-time nannies and elder care. And I was a bootstrap entrepreneur with this crazy idea in the mid-1990s that had the good fortune to grow to industry leadership, enterprise scale size, and then a strategic great marriage acquisition after 22 years. And I have exited being a full-time co-founder in the last few years, put my hat on full-time for stepping into smart progress for women in entrepreneurship as a role model who's got a full journey, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a full life as well. I am married, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I have 2 children in their late 20s who went on this ride with me as we built this business. So there's a little bit of background on who I am that will give you perspective of where I come from as Sai and I have a conversation.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you so much for offering the book and what have you to our listeners and our participants all around. As Stephanie mentioned, please register, and also in the comments, please include your address, and we will make sure to act on that. So thank you. So Stephanie, diving right in, there's a lot of ideas. What is entrepreneurship all about?
Sai, I love this really high level question. There's lots of media written about it. And I'm just going to come from my deep experience. For me, entrepreneurship are people who are called, I think, in some way to this journey. However, I think that entrepreneurs are made, not born. There's a lot of argument in the marketplace today about this. And I truly believe that entrepreneurs are made, not born. I do believe that you may have some innate talents that call you to this specialized field, like being a musician, for example. But I believe to really be a great entrepreneur, you have to go to work and do the hard work to grow the skills, the talent, the expertise for you and your business to be great. So that's sort of my overarching philosophical view of entrepreneurship. But let's have a little fun and let's talk about my view of what entrepreneurship is and what it isn't, from a real life experience. Let's start with the knots. I actually made a couple of notes. I'm going to glance over here every now and then so I stay on topic. Entrepreneurship is not sexy or glamorous. No matter what the media says, from start to finish, it is never sexy or glamorous. It may be fulfilling, it may be powerful, but it's not sexy. Entrepreneurship is not fast. The journey from inception to scale to exit, if you have one, and exit means lots of different things. For successful entrepreneurs, it is usually long, at least 10 years. For most of us, decades. For me, it was 22 years, and I actually would have kept going if an amazing acquisition opportunity had not come along for the company. Entrepreneurship is not freedom. Yes, it has flexibility because you're the captain of your ship. You get to define the hours to some degree based on your business, on what you do, when you do it, how you do it, but it is more work. So it's not freedom, but it is flexibility within that level of work. And lastly, entrepreneurship is not about taking risk with reckless abandon. The media loves to tell these stories about Instagram as the perfect example. I mean, the folks who, started a business largely in their garage, and 3 years later, Facebook bought it for $1 billion. Great entrepreneurs are actually great risk mitigators. So those are the things I think it's not, that is in contradiction to the media. Let's talk about what it is. Let's do the positives. My list is a little bit longer. Entrepreneurship is about mitigating risk at all times, from beginning to end. You do it well, you will succeed. Entrepreneurship is humbling. You must enjoy, I use that word enjoy, being the CEO and the janitor and everything in between at various stages of your journey. As you grow and scale, you get to take hats off and hire experts to do some of those things, but you have to be willing to be the top and the bottom and everything in between as you go. And that humbling experience, I actually think is powerful for success. Entrepreneurship is constant problem solving. I actually think the most primal definition of entrepreneurship is the ability and the love of solving problems constantly. You're going to do it from the day you start to the day you end. There is no mold for our new businesses. So if you want to create, grow, perfect, be disparate, become best of breed, you're going to be solving problems at every turn. Entrepreneurship does require you to be a Jill of all trades, and for you to actually love knowing that you do a lot of things pretty well, because those 2 or 3 things where we're a rock star, yeah, you get to do those, but you have to do all the others as well. And you have to find joy in the learning that comes from wearing hats where you're not great. And last, I think I would say that being an entrepreneur is bring you to your knees work. But if entrepreneurship is for you, this is where you'll be at your happiest. I know it was true for me. So I'll wrap up kind of this long, what it's not and what it is with a story, so that you can kind of bring a visual to my points. I'm going to use the story from the early days of my journey. So when I was making the decision to leap from corporate America into entrepreneurship with a business idea, we developed a test, an MVP. And this national business that I ended up growing, it started as just a test in 2 states. And I didn't quit my job. I moonlighted for almost 2 years. And although humbling, bring you to your knees, it was also powerful. And after 2 years, the little idea was growing legs. I learned how to pivot. I was mitigating risk. And I either was going to shut it down because a side hustle was killing me, or we were going to take this thing national. So we took it national, and here's what it looked like. I quit my job as the first full-time co-founder. We were bootstrap entrepreneurs. Commercial banks don't love to loan to folks without profit, and the funding ecosystem doesn't look like it does today. It was the mid-1990s. So we depleted our savings. We depleted our children's college fund. They were 2 and 3. The first office was in my home basement. And it was financially very stressful. It was operationally very stressful. Fast forward to the exit 20 years later, a staff of 60, 15 million in revenue, a 25,000 square foot office. And I can tell you today that the happiest times of my journey were those first 2 years when I made the leap in the home office. And if you feel that way, then entrepreneurship is for you. So there's my insights on what it is and what it isn't, and if it's for you.
Wonderfully expressed, extremely eloquent, extremely eloquent. And I want to emphasize just a few things that I heard in your rendition, if you will. You mentioned the word journey approximately 7 times. It's very powerful because it truly is a journey. And I really appreciate that. Additionally, to get on that journey, it's a calling and it requires commitment. Exactly as I love the way you express it. And that commitment is actually going to constrain elements of freedom. It doesn't, you're not, and I love the way that you eloquently described that. By all means, humbling and bringing us to our knees is extremely key. So thank you for that wonderfully rich expression all around, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you. I will say, though, that I use that word journey because it had a success story wrapped around it that the media writes about, which makes it that more fulfilling.
Yeah.
But every step of the way was just fun. And I think largely because I feel like I was able to live a career where I got to experience my best. And I hope other entrepreneurs feel the same way.
Yes. And definitively, when I was reading your book, if you will, and I've read it multiple times, as I expressed actually before we started, you get a sense of that journey, and it extremely, and the word enjoy, if you will, that as you go through the journey, you have to find joy. You don't find joy at the end. It's through the journey. So I love the way that you've rendered it. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, absolutely.
So, kind of taking us even further, as you look at entrepreneurship, the implications economically, the impact, the power struggles in whatever form you look at the word power, I'd love to kind of get your impressions on the impacts and the dynamics of it all.
Sai, this is a topic I love to talk about because the media, does talk about where we are economically, the impact of women in entrepreneurship, but they never are able to talk about it holistically, I guess, because it would take pages to write. And I really, really believe that having an understanding of the entrepreneurial landscape, kind of the state of the union, if you will, it really helps entrepreneurs make good decisions inside their own business and where they stand in that landscape and what kind of impact they are having and may have in the future as they participate in entrepreneurship in the landscape. So indulge me for a few minutes, everyone, and let me give you a little state of the union. And then we talk about how I want to talk about a little bit how we navigate some of the pitfalls in that state of the union in order to have the greatest impact. I'm a walking set of statistics. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I like that. So let me share some with you. Women-owned businesses have grown from 26% to 39% of all businesses in the United States over the last 25 years. This is 1.5 times the national average. And it is a huge plus to the progress in the evolution of women in entrepreneurship. And it needs to be celebrated. It really does. Media loves to just talk about the negative side. But there's a lot of work to do. And let me share the other side of it on where we are and where your opportunities are in that. Women-owned businesses employ only 6.2% of our workforce, and we contribute only 4% of total revenue in the United States. Only 11% of women-owned businesses have employees. Most of us are solopreneurs and we're not scaling yet. We represent 16% of overall firms in the country that have employees. This is the big one that I love to tout, and it's a common one. 2% of our firms cross that $1 million mark in revenue and begin to move on to scale. And that number hasn't, or that percentage hasn't increased since the year 2000. Men are 3.5 times more likely to cross that $1 million mark. And actually, the Women's Chamber of Commerce states that women-owned businesses would be contributing 10 trillion more to our economy in the United States alone if we were at parity. So there's a whole list of stats that create a little bit of a dismal picture. So let's turn to the positive. Inside these dismal stats, the US economy is screaming, for lack of a better word, for transformational entrepreneurs. What is a transformational entrepreneur? It's someone who starts a business simply for aspirations of growth, not for flexibility, and not for personal reasons. And the number of transformational entrepreneurs in this country is shrinking. Ladies, there is a huge opportunity to step in and go on the tough journey, as we talked about, Sai, to become a transformational entrepreneur, to take a business into thinking big, to scaling, and creating the change that we want to see. Well, easy for me to say, let's just do it. So let's kind of round out this conversation with an understanding of the barriers and maybe give you a better way of how do you think about the barriers as you enhance your impact. We could spend an hour talking about the barriers. So I lump them into kind of 4 general categories and how I think about where am I in a barrier when I'm making decisions. And the first and foremost, which is written about the most, is funding. We know that women are not funded at an equal level, and a lot of good work is being done there. I will note this, ladies, women also don't seek funding at the same level as men, whether it be loans or equity. So we have work to do there to be seeking funding at parity. The second category is a big giant one. It captures almost everything. I call it internal and societal barriers. This includes things like confidence, fear of failure, and the big one for me, bucking the societal norm in whatever it is you're doing and feeling guilty about it. Who says that the way we do things today is the way that they should be done or create happiness or success? I became an entrepreneur in the mid-1990s, so simply just being a woman trying to start a business was a hurdle in and of itself. I have to admit, I would go to PTA meetings and things like that, and I simply just wouldn't tell people what I did. Don't do that. Don't be me. Fight that internal barrier. Number 3, my favorite, lack of role models. This is huge. It's actually statistical. Research has shown us that entrepreneurs, men and women, are 3 times less likely to start a business or scale a business if they don't have a role model, if they can't see it to be it. And this is where women like me can make a big difference. If we can just step in to the conversation, now that there beginning to be more of us, and let you see that we are here and we're standing on the corner next to the men, I think that we will overcome this barrier. And the last one is gender inequality. And I don't have the answers to this one, but I can kind of sum it up by saying that I've read a lot of research recently that states that we are a little bit stalled in the workplace and at home around gender inequality. However, men and women would choose equality in the workplace, in their jobs, and in their home lives if it were easier. And my glass half full answer to that is entrepreneurs, we have an opportunity to build businesses with gender equality and begin to play a vital role to have impact, as I said, in shifting that paradigm on what is considered normal in our society and allow genders to function equally at work and at home. So there's kind of my landscape, high level view of what entrepreneurship looks like. these barriers and the statistics aren't changing tomorrow. Yes, it's going to be a little more work. Yeah, you got to work a little smarter. Yes, the strategy to get from A to B may be a little slower, and you may have to have some patience, but none of this is insurmountable. And I think it's absolutely a wrong answer to say, I can't scale. I can't hire that next group of people, whatever it may be in your journey, because the barriers are in the way. There is definitely a roadblock standing in front of you often, but you don't have to knock it down. You can go around it. You can go over it. You can go under it. So I do think that if you're aware of where you sit in this landscape, it may help you navigate the barriers more effectively. So that was a lot. I kind of get going on this one.
It's fantastic. And it really shares some all around just tremendous wisdom, because in particular, you don't have to destroy the old to create the new. Just create the new. Just establish where we need to go.
Excellent point.
Yes.
Excellent point. Half the energy. Half the energy.
Yeah. So it's brilliant. You know, so there's so many nuggets in the book, quite honestly, as I read it and what have you. So I'm really, really glad you're pulling a lot of the wisdom forward so people can really embrace it and digest it. One phrase that you used in particular, you said, you know, we're standing next to the men. I think in the same way, the men are standing next to the women. We are definitively together in moving this forward.
Yes, and actually you bring up a very good point, Si, that I didn't include and I should have. Where the most powerful progress is going to happen is when we do it in collaboration.
Yeah.
And that's a critical part of this process. I read a quote by Sheryl Sandberg a couple of years ago in which she said, you know, I'm waiting for the day, you know, when women run half of our businesses and men run half of our households. And I agree, but I will add to that. And we do it all in collaboration.
Yep. Yep. Wonderfully said. And the other thing I definitely want to sort of ask you to share your wisdom, and I realize we're pushing time, but I think the audience would love to hear your voice on this, is, you know, a lot of folks, before they even start, they say, well, you know, I gotta have a well thought out strategy, and I gotta have this, and I gotta have that. I would love for you to share sort of your thoughts on entrepreneurship, how that relates to strategy, if you will, as well as leadership. And I realize, again, we're pushing time, but I'd love for the audience to hear sort of your wisdom there.
Absolutely. Let me lead with that. Actually, it's a great question. I'll kind of give you my overarching thoughts about, I'll add a word, strategy, plan, and leadership. And then I'll bring the conversation home with 2 or 3 actual today practical, actionable things you can do underneath that. So let's start with the high level. I am a person in which I believe that planning is never overrated. I actually, and that's probably part of my personality. It's not just a recipe for success with entrepreneurship. So I absolutely believe that you do have to have a plan. You do have to have strategy that what I call overturns every stone. So when you bump up against the strategies you didn't choose, you know why you chose the ones that you did. Having said that, particularly our millennial generation and younger have fear of failure and analysis paralysis around all of this. So underneath the whole idea that you don't want to just shoot from the hip, you need to be well planned. You need to have some well thought out, well researched strategy. You also need to realize that you're creating something new and you don't have all the answers. You never will have all the answers. It's the nature of entrepreneurship. And you really need to come to a point where you say, I'm going to spend X period of time. I like putting deadlines on things. I think I have a great idea. And I'm going to spend 2 months, 4 months, actually devoting, I'm still working full time to use my example. I'm going to devote 10 hours a week to researching, planning, thinking through, getting the idea off the ground. What does marketing look like? What does sales look like? What does operations look like? How much might that cost? And strategically, maybe for 1 to 3 years, what might this look like? And then at the end of those 2 months or those 4 months, I'm going to look at what I've done and say, how much more is there that I actually could know? And how much is there that I can keep looking and I won't find it? And when is it time to just go and be a leader in your space? So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I believe in planning, I believe in strategy, and I believe in, at a certain point, having confidence that you know there are unknown unknowns and it's time to go. And when it's time to go, yeah, you're scared. Yeah, you're faking it till you make it. But in that, there is a sense of leadership that I'm going to take the work that I've done and I am going to lead it one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 year at a time, if you're looking out 3 years. And I will be I call it the captain of the ship. You use the word leadership. I will be the captain of the ship and I will embrace the successes and I will embrace the failures and I will use them to create better leadership tomorrow. So there's kind of an overarching philosophical way that I approach everything, whether it be starting a business or it be a project within an existing business. And specifically, I'd like to kind of take that and end with kind of 3 tangible examples that kind of fit up underneath this idea of planning and strategy and leadership in an actionable way. I'm going to touch on one really quickly that might feel a little bit out of the box, but it's for those of you who are in early stage or thinking about entrepreneurship. I told this story in the very beginning with Sai about how I stepped into entrepreneurship intentionally so I could bring it back up in the end. And that is committing to the power of the test. There's lots written today about how entrepreneurs don't need to strategize, don't need to plan, just need to leap and figure it out as you go, because there are a lot of unknowns. I am not a proponent of that. And I actually think there are many great ideas who have failed because they didn't do the humbling, painstaking work of a test. Take the time to build some kind of a test, some kind of a concept that you want to prove. And it actually will allow you to mitigate risk, because if it doesn't work, it didn't derail your life. You didn't commit your entire soul and being to this and you move on. If it is going to work, you learn, you pivot, and your level of success after this painstaking, humbling, stressful test is going to create a higher level of success. So I'm a huge believer in that. I'll leave you with 2 more. One, and this is specific about organizations. This is for the people who are scaling. Wanted to kind of touch on everybody. I had the strategy that when I say it's going to sound like common sense, and I rarely see it done. It's about hiring and building your organization. And I call it hire and build your organization with the strategy to groom yourself out of a job. And if you're grooming yourself out of a job, you're teaching your managers how to do that as well. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, sure, that's what we're going to do. But I will tell you what, in the heat of growing and building a business, you are pulled to just hire folks who can come in and get the job done now, because that's what the company needs. But if that's what happens, and that is your focus in how you build an organization, you miss a cultural opportunity to invest in people and help grow their skills and their business acumen and their maturity and whatever their expertise is. But more importantly, you become the one that holds your business back. If you're not growing, there isn't any room for anybody underneath you to grow. And when you grow and everybody underneath you grows, the business grows. And I had this conversation with someone the other day, and they were the CEO, and they said, but I'm the CEO. You know, I'm not ready for an exit. I don't want to groom someone to be a CEO. And I'm speaking here from personal experience. Your definition of what it takes to be a CEO at a particular point in your business is not what it needs to be in 5 or 10 years. So if you can groom someone to be the CEO you are today, you get to be the CEO at the next level. And that is what creates this ongoing monumental growth for a business. And as I said, you know, creates that power and that impact to create the change that we're looking for ourselves, for our businesses, you know, for the economy, for that matter. And the last one, I'm going to go to the personal side. I want to end with a personal note. This one everybody knows, but I'm going to give you a to-do to go and work on it harder and more tangibly, especially during COVID in the world that we live in right now. Tangibly find a boundary, a structure, a definition to what the right level of separation is for you between work and home life. If it is like this all the time, then you are mediocre at everything. Our human brain does not have the ability to truly multitask. We don't. We can say we do, but we don't. We just shift from one thing to another. And more importantly, your home life and your work life isn't getting your best you. So it doesn't get to be its best. If you can find some right level of true separation between your work life and your home life, then each of those areas get your best. You get to be at your best. And this is where there is no balance in life, but there is integration and there's conscious work to find boundaries and to recognize the right level of integration for you. So that's a personal one that is an ongoing actionable item in everybody's lives. Okay, so I hope I brought the conversation home. We've gone a little over time. I hope that was helpful.
Most definitely, all good. And I have to emphasize, Stephanie, and you and I have known each other for a very, very short time, and what have you. I work with a lot of executives. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. And what always strikes me is the degree of ego that manifests or the degree of humbleness that manifests and the humanity. Mm-hmm. And respectfully, where ego manifests, a lot of them just got lucky. But when there is humbleness that truly manifests, they've made the journey. And respectfully, if we use a cliche, they get it. They've gone through that journey.
Yeah. They've been there, done that.
Exactly. And the reason I emphasize this is because you deeply, deeply strike me as a very, very humane person and a very, very much humble person. So the world appreciates your voice all around.
Oh, thank you. Well, that makes my heart warm.
Thank you so much. And by all means, you're going to be with us on the 13th. And folks should, by all means, register, request Stephanie's book. You'll absolutely love it. And join us for the event where you'll get a chance to really hear Stephanie share even more.
Thank you, Sai. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you so much. And we thank all our listeners. Thank you, Stephanie, and all.